Well, welcome back to another episode. I'm joined by my good friend, co-author, Matt Spacer of bondsuits.com. How are you doing today, Matt?
Hey Pete, great to be here.
Great to have you. Got a special guest on the show today, introducing Mr. Delroy Smith, Bespoke Tailor Delroy Smith. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you. Very
Delroy, pleasure to have you on the show. We got acquainted just very recently over Instagram. You responded to a photo that I posted of Doug Hayward and Michael Caine, that famous photo that we actually discussed on a previous episode, laughing away. And you said, "Oh yeah, that was a great day to be in the shop." And yeah, my jaw dropped. So please, Delroy, before we get into that, maybe you can give us an introduction to who you are. Brag a little bit, please.
Brag a bit. Right, okay. I'm, as you know, Delroy Smith. I am a master tailor. Brief history. I started off being trained by Doug Hayward. I mean, I had a bit of tailoring background prior to that. I was at a company called Costello and Sons, which were more military-based and theatrical tailors. Before that, I was at London College of Fashion for 2 years, doing the old-fashioned bespoke tailoring, all made by hand course for 2 years. Fast forward again, I was at with Doug Hayward for 10 years. So I worked with him for that amount of time. And that was a great insight into the real world, West End tailoring. I'll be brutally honest, at that time, I underestimated what Doug was about. I just went to him for a job, to work, because I was hungry. I wanted to get into tailoring. That was my love. So walked through the door, and that was it. He, after trying quite a few times in and around the West End, Savile Row especially, that was about 3 or 4 times, an attempt to try and get an apprenticeship working in the West End to do what I love. But just to let you know briefly, I'm a 3rd generation tailor, so I come from a background of tailors. I grew up around tailoring, but it didn't click with me as a kid. Even in my teens, I was always around sewing machines and cottons and cloth patterns and that kind of thing. But you're into other things. It wasn't on my radar at all. So around about the age of 19, I believe, penny drops, and suddenly I realized this is what I want to do. So
Okay.
that's history.
So age 19, are you being shown anything by your mum, your dad? Are you going to get introduced by any kind of cutting at that stage?
So, yeah, there were things, but it's one of those things, if you're not interested, you're not interested. You just don't take it on board. I've always had a love for clothes, but I didn't do anything for me. Do you know what I mean? So I wasn't interested at all. So that went aside, and I got a job actually. That's really where the spark started. I got a job working for Next in Fenchurch Street, and they put me in charge of the made-to-measure department. And I started that and measuring customers, getting the measurements, sending them off to a company called Beard Menswear Brand, which was, I think it's Chester Barrier, Cheshire Bespoke now, because it's been taken over. That factory is gone. I just wanted to know more. I'm one of those people. I wanted to know, how is a suit constructed? What is it that makes that suit? How the fit and everything. I know I needed to know more, and I couldn't get that from working at Next because they was a totally different business.
So what year is it? Give us a kind of time frame now when you're getting into when you're meeting Doug and you're learning with Doug.
I've been in tailoring now for the best parts of 30 years, I would say. So we're looking at, when I talk about Next, we're looking at 30 years ago when I joined London College of Fashion. That's where my bespoke tailoring career started. I'd heard of Doug's name being thrown about because a girl I was dating then, her father worked for Doug. she says, "Oh, you should get a job with Doug Hayward." I was working at Selfridges because I left Next by then. I was working at Selfridges. And she said, "You should get a job with Doug. He does this, he does that, and he's got all this, that, and whatever." And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. It didn't drop with me. I didn't take it on board. So again, we're looking, 30 years ago, we're looking at 91, 92, around about that period. And again, I just went on to get a job, go to college, get a job at Costello's, and then I went on to go and work for Doug. That's really where my education started. It really got going because I learned everything from style to how to work with customers, high-end customers as well, because as you know, his client list was it was up there. So that was an experience in itself, and watching him every day was a blessing and a real eye opener. And yeah, he just taught me a hell of a lot, of which I've learned, I still use today. There's nothing really changed from what I do, because from what I saw, it worked. It worked from everything from cutting patterns to fitting to getting work out the door. And this was a time when we were taking a lot of orders in the shop then in Mount Street. So that was, we were busy using the tailors we had, learning about who he made for, and putting colours together. And that's really what it was. And just embracing, and again, just simple little things, getting on with customers. That's really what it was. Yeah.
Matt, I guess you got 101 questions about Doug Hayward, right?
Yeah, well, I think what I'm most interested in is how was Doug different from other tailors?
How was he different? He was himself. He wasn't, you see, he came from a generation of tailors where it was very stiff and military. And Savile Row then, you probably heard various things about, if you Google Doug or whatever, heard certain things about his background and how he couldn't get a job working in Savile Row. And I don't think where he couldn't conform with the regimental ways of doing things in Savile Row and other tailoring houses in Mayfair then, because they weren't like they are now. They were, if you could imagine, frosted windows, half frosted shutters, so you couldn't see into the shops. Everything was very, what can I say, a dusty atmosphere. A lot of wood, brass. Everything was very navy blue, black, grey. Yeah, just very old school, if you can imagine that period in tailoring. Yeah. And he didn't slot in well with that at all, and it just wasn't him. He couldn't get a job, so he in himself was very relaxed, and that's what I learned from Doug. Just having a laugh with customers. And now, if you guys walked in there, he would embrace you, would have a laugh with you. He'll find some little thing, even if it means Mickey taking. You're coming in for an order, and you're very serious to come in with an order, you're spending a certain amount of money, you'll find that little something to just have a laugh with you. And that's what it was. So, and I found out, and what I learned from him with that is very important, because your customer then becomes relaxed in his environment, he becomes relaxed in himself. And the suit fits, but you get a better judgment of how a suit fits and how that customer stands. Now, if I stand very military, stiff, sergeant major kind of thing, I'm not getting a good judgment of how I am naturally when I'm standing in a room talking to someone in years to come. You see what I mean? Because my shoulders are up. They're not naturally like that, for example. So he made people feel relaxed, and you just have a good laugh, and you just loved being around in that environment, in that shop. And it was a lot different from any other shop that I'd been in. And still till today, no one does it. They've tried to replicate it in a certain way, and the influence he's had, and I will say this, the influence he's had over since then is touched every single shop in Savile Row, and in the West End, wherever they are. Even the style that he has now, to a point.
I heard stories. We've interviewed Audie Charles for the book, and numerous other people, that he would be that way with customers, but kind of just watch them in their natural postures, and even sit down and just have them kind of walk around and do drawings of them just as they were doing what they were doing in kind of day-to-day life. And also that kind of personable approach. I worked in a tailor's once, and I had a guy who was a salesman. He was a very, very good salesman, very, very pushy. And I was with a client, and he sold him the suit, did the measurements, and afterwards the salesman goes off, and the client comes up to me and goes, "Who is that guy?" I go, "Oh, he's our best salesman here." He goes, "He's an arsehole." He basically said, "Look, I'm buying this suit because I want the suit, but I don't want to be dealing with that guy again," because there was just this kind of, he felt slimy afterwards. And I've had that before as well. I've bought a suit, but I felt like I've been sold the suit rather than wanting to actually buy the suit. So that, what you were talking about there, having that relationship with the customer, even afterwards, and like the continuation, and that stuff that you get, that connection, sounds like Doug had that in spades.
Yeah, absolutely. He wasn't the type of person to, he's a natural salesman anyway, because that's really what he did when, from what I know, when he worked for, I think his first job was Stanford in Shepherd's Bush. That's right. He was a salesman there. And he was just natural, gifted at speaking to people, making them feel relaxed and that kind of thing. He wasn't that hard salesman that you get nowadays, that are really, like you said, being pushed for that suit instead of sold the suit instead of wanting the suit. And the environment in the shop, the way it was then, you liked being there. Even if you didn't buy a suit that day, I guarantee you, at some stage later on, you'd come back and say, "I wanted to invest in a suit from you."
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I feel. When I go into a shop, I want to feel like, they make me comfortable, and I become friends with, salespeople or tailors. And I feel like that's very important.
Yeah, and
especially when you're spending a lot of money.
Yeah, because it had a magic. It's a service, and that's what we had. And with Audie at the front of the shop selling, she was always lovely and welcoming, absolutely great. She was brilliant for that job. And then Doug was there, but when the customers came, so-called backstage, into the cutting room where myself and Les was, it was something else as well. They loved being in that environment, because in other tailors, they didn't allow you to the back. You only stood in cells, in the shop front. They wouldn't allow you back where the stuff was being cut. It was being recut, fitting, the alterations, the tailors making the garments. You wasn't ever in and around that environment. Yeah. So it was an open shop.
Yeah. So is the style that you cut, is that very much from Doug, or do you have a different style?
No, it's very much from Doug now. I left Hayward almost 10, 11 years ago. And I went to Kilgour. They had their own style, but I can kind of continue to do the Hayward cut there as well. There was a few differences. I was asked to do the Kilgour cut, but in the end, what customers wanted was, because Kilgour, if I just give you a brief thing, Kilgour was traditionally a big chesty cut, because years ago, it was a lot of tailors had their own cut, their own style. You'd notice it straight off. Doug had his style. Henry Pauls had their style. Kilgour had their style. Dejan Skinner, Anderson and Shepherd, they all had their own style, and you'd know. But now, sadly, it's become very generic in a way, because of the influence of ready-to-wear and what people want. So, in a way, what I did is bring what Doug's style to Kilgour, because I got fed up of making a suit with a big chest and having to clear the chest, make it flatter, make it slimmer, and it kind of just ended up looking like a Doug suit. So I just, hands up, I just made a Doug suit anyway. So that's what, now going forward for myself, I will put more and more of that into it, because there's a different lapel shape, there's a different shoulder line, there's a different waist position, different length. So there's little things and nuances that make a Hayward suit.
Delroy, sorry, Matt. Sorry, go on.
Oh no, I just wanted to, can you describe those details that made the Doug suit special?
Yeah, it was very well. I won't tell you everything, but I'll tell you briefly what it is, which you've seen. It was because going back in history, Savile Row at the time when Doug was starting out in Mount Street, the notch and lapel shape was much lower. So it was a lot lower. The gauge line was a lot more sloping. The belly on the lapels was a lot more rounded. Now, Doug was higher. The gauge line was straighter, and the belly was a lot straighter as well. A lot of that is what you see now, because it's been copied and adjusted. And Doug had a very Italian influence in what he did, because he used a lot of Italian tailors when he started in '66, I believe. Yeah, in '66, yeah.
And so I don't want to, I'm probably way off with my decades here, but when you went to Kilgour, did you pick up where Tommy Nutter left off, or was that a lot earlier?
Oh, that was a lot earlier. Tommy Nutter at Kilgour. Tommy Nutter was a salesman at Kilgour, but that was when Kilgour was in Dover Street. They weren't on Savile Row then.
Right.
Yeah, so that was way before me.
Sorry, man. I probably put about 30 years on you. Well, it's just as you mentioned, like the big chest and the kind of long and the broad and the big shoulders. I just thought, oh yeah, okay, cool. That reminds me, because he was there.
Very much. If you look at the film North by Northwest, the Cary Grant, that was Kilgour, and also Top Hat from what's his name now, Fred Astaire, which I recreated for Kilgour. It's got to be 8-9 years ago now.
Ah, interesting.
Permanent Style from
Simon Compton, yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that's on Amazon now. So yeah, we did a review of North by Northwest not long ago, and we got. I'm sure we've got to do Top Hat at some point. Delroy, I'm curious to know if you had the likes of Roger Moore come into the shop as well as Michael Caine. You said you were there that day when Michael came in. Can you talk about some of those special moments when people like that entered the shop?
Every day was a special moment, because I know it sounds weird. I'm not showing off or bragging or anything, but every day someone of a public figure came in. I didn't get it or appreciate it too much in the beginning, but then you're sitting there, you're working, you're cutting away, and all of a sudden Roger Moore would walk in. Have you seen it's on YouTube now, British Style Genius?
When the Roger and Michael are coming in, and they had that moment with Doug.
That scene there, that was true. That wasn't a setup at all. That was a true situation, and that was as it was with other famous people on other days. And that, or sometimes it was just one famous person that day, which come and see Doug. I know I'd put my head around the screen and say, oh, okay, look, there's John Collins there. Do you know what I mean? And that's what happened. You know, there's Mark Burley, or there's there's Ralph Lauren. You know what I mean? He's coming to, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So every day was something new. Every day was different. Do you know what I mean? Even if the regulars, regulars that came in more or less every day to go to lunch with Doug, someone like Terry O'Neill and Philip Kingsley, the head nutritionist.
Johnny Gold. Johnny
Yeah.
Gold. Johnny Gold's still around, right?
I believe so. I haven't heard, I think he lives in Barbados or the Bahamas now, from what I hear.
We got to track Johnny down. I think he'll have a few tales to tell.
He's brilliant. He'll give you some stories. Yeah.
Well, can you remember anything specific about, say, what Roger would ask for if you did any cutting for Roger at all?
Roger was pretty much, his style was what you ended up seeing in the latter Bond films. That blazer with the gold buttons, that long, lovely, absolutely beautiful. I loved working with it and on it. It was a long cashmere overcoat with I forgot what film it was. You're going to have to remind me. It was a velvet collar. I think it was a double-breasted.
Oh, and Live and Let Die.
Live and Let Die?
I think so. It was the beginning scenes of that film, one of the Bond films. There's pictures around of it. It's absolutely top drawer. He had that, and he had that remade for him. I know the cloth as well, because it's still around now. It was Harrison's. It was. I think it was a double-breasted, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
So you remade that for him personally?
Yeah. Along with
Amazing.
colleagues and everything like that. So
that's an amazing coat, Matt. You and I have spoken about that coat. We've dedicated entire episodes to that coat. It's it even went up for auction, didn't we? We got hold of the guy who had it, and then I think he resold it. I have to dig up.
Yeah, the original coat.
Yeah.
The original coat that was in the film?
Yeah.
Yes, because the original was not from Hayward. Hayward didn't start doing work for Roger Moore until a number of years later.
Okay.
But we'll send you a couple of links, because I know I even spoke to the gentleman that bought it from auction, and I know that he resold it. In fact, I know what the story is. I think he sold it back to Eon. I'll have to dig up that thread, but I digress. Delroy, please tell me about what's happening with you now. So you're setting up, you're flying solo on your own. How does it work? You got your own studio there?
Yeah, well, because of the pandemic, I'm currently working from home, but I have my own tailoring house now. So I still, up to last year, was working still with some of the tailors that Doug used from then. There's a few politics going on. I still may go back and work with them, but I don't actually need them to continue what Doug did. And that's what I'm doing now. So I have now left Kilgour, and I'm working for myself, doing now the Hayward style, bringing that back, and making the way I did when I was with Doug, really. So yeah, I'm flying solo. So that's me.
Amazing. And well, for the uninitiated, people can get hold of you on Instagram, delroysmith.mastertailor. Is there a website up and running that we can send people to?
That's being done as we speak, and all that's happening, and it's exciting times. It really is.
You got to have me down. I want to come down and take some photos, and we can do some kind of presentation for the website.
Yeah, I'd love to have you guys on board, and
I'm a sucker for all that stuff.
So it's exciting times for me. I look forward to it. It's been a dream ever since I was at Hayward. Like I said before, I learned so much. It was great working with Doug. Even his daughter, Polly, she was great. We did a little thing. I don't know if you saw it in the ES magazine. I think I have it here somewhere. I've managed to dig it up.
Let's have a look at this. This will be great for people. You have to swing by the YouTube channel, and also I think you posted this on your Instagram. If it's what I think it is.
Yes, it may.
Yeah.
It may.
But There we
Oh,
go.
wonderful.
And that's Polly.
That's Polly. That's Doug's daughter.
And that's your, nice.
Yeah. So
Wow.
it was.
Where was that taken?
That was in the shop. That was in the shop, looking towards the back of the shop where the workshop was.
Right.
And my cutting bench. And I'll show you this as well. So I've got I mean, you've probably seen it.
Ah, there we go. Well, that's a fantastic Sammy Davis Jr.
That's right, yeah.
Doug sizing him up there.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful photo. I've not seen that photo before.
I don't think I've seen it before either.
So, sorry, I'm pulling that away from you.
No, it's beautiful.
It's amazing.
That was a photo. This is a photocopy of the actual original that Doug had in the fitting room. For those customers that actually know, the fitting room and had something there, you would have seen that. I still, because I don't, well, you do know, Hayward was taken over once Doug passed away. A couple of years after Doug passed away, I'd left by then, by a couple of tailors from Savile Row, and things changed. It's got by Richie
Charlton,
Campbell Carey, yeah. But that was it had the name Hayward, but it was a completely different business then. And that period, because as I worked with them for a year when they took over, and sadly things were thrown out. A lot of the history was gone, and it was sad because you see pieces of Doug's history in a box on the street, ready for Westminster Council to come and collect. And it was.
Don't tell me things like that. I won't get to sleep.
And I've got some bits and pieces that I managed to drag out the bin, literally pulling out the bin that was on the street, because it broke my heart when that was outdoors. So yeah, some forms and things like that I just managed to pull out, and things, just silly little things, just little cards like that.
That's beautiful.
The Mount Street shop.
That's nice. I've not seen that before either.
Yeah, that's a painting of the shop the way it was. I don't know when it was done, but little things like that. So yeah.
Oh, well done. Do you know, it's such a shame. I know we speak about this all the time, but during that period, how so little is preserved. I mean, in a way, you had like Terry O'Neill around to take some really awesome photos, but you don't have the kind of everyday guy on the phone getting the, like you do now, for example, when you just want to take a photo and it's done and it's documented and it's for everyone to see. But back then it was, I know Jonathan Softcott have said, you know, he didn't really have the chance to see that appreciation, that kind of groundswell of appreciation for his style and his influence that is so prevalent today.
Yeah, no, you don't, because, I mean, Jonathan Softcott, he knows. He was there, you know, most of the time, always coming in, having lunch with Doug and that kind of thing. So he could tell you himself, so I'm sure he has done, tell you some stories. But in a way, it was, how can I explain it? It was sad to see, really, because towards the end, Doug's decline in his health and everything, I won't go into it too much, but it was sad to see. And you see pieces of that magic kind of slowly disappear. And then when it was taken over by Richie and Campbell, it was kind of going, and it was gone by the time that happened. And it was completely, like I said, a different business. And a lot of the history had gone. And sadly, that has happened to a lot of tailors in the past, shirt makers, shoemakers, that kind of thing. And that's really, really what happened.
Which is why I think which is why I'm personally fascinated in stories like these, Delroy, because I feel like these memories, you're like the gatekeeper to some of these memories that are, you know, just out in the wind. So thank you for coming on the show and talking about it. Matt, did you have anything else for Delroy?
Oh, no. Yeah, thank you for telling us these stories and keeping the Hayward legacy alive.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me.
Thanks,
It's been
mate.
great talking to you guys, because for the past 10 years, I haven't really spoken to a lot of people about Hayward and what happened and how it was then. And like I said, going back to your previous question, every day was different. It was actually one of the best times in my career. I'll be brutally honest with you. It was great. And even now, when I go to Scott's on the occasional times when we could, I look back at the shop, and it brings an element of joy and sadness to see what it is now. I've not been down there for a couple of years, so it was great. So the ambition for me personally, I'm hoping to get back down that part of Mayfair. I wouldn't be going back into Savile Row, because I've enjoyed around Mount Street, that part. So that's the ambition, and I'm hoping that would come to fruition I would say next year.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, between here and then, we've got to do something down Scott's. So when I'm next in town, I'll drop you a line, and hopefully we can meet up. And Matt, maybe you might be in the neighbourhood by then as well.
Yeah, I hope I'm able to travel back to London soon.
Yeah, I hope so. Delroy, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you, meeting you, and thanks for your time on the weekend, mate.
Yeah, thank you. Great talking to you guys.
Great.
Thank you.